This is the story of an old man who went to live in the desert after he retired from his job. One day, as he was walking in the desert, he saw a bird that had been hit by an arrow, and it fell down right in front of him. The old man took the bird home, cleaned its wounds, bandaged them, and gave it food and water, and put it in a cage, and sat by it all day and all night until the bird healed. The next morning, the old man opened the door of the cage and said to the bird, "You are free to go," expecting the bird to fly away at any moment. But the bird stayed still for a long time without moving or making a sound. Finally, it began to hop around the cage as if it wanted to get out, so the old man opened the door again and let it out. The bird flew a little distance and then returned. It hopped around the old man as if thanking him for saving its life, and then it disappeared over the horizon. Every day, the old man waited for the bird to return, but it didn't. On the 40th day, the old man lost hope of ever seeing the bird again. He went back to the cage to clean it, and this is what he found inside. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. So, have you seen anything like this before? If yes, please let me know in the comments what it is and what happened next. But if you haven't, then let me tell you. This is the tale of a bird called a nightingale, and this is how it repays the favors done to it. In some versions of this story, the old man finds a ring instead of a nightingale, but in both cases, the meaning is the same. Just like the bird, the ring is a symbol of appreciation. It represents the gratitude of someone who has been helped. It shows up just when hope has begun to fade, like a surprise gift from someone who was never going to admit they were giving you a gift. So, who was the nightingale or the ring for? For the old man, of course. It's easy to assume that when we do something nice for someone, they will remember and appreciate it. But sometimes, we don't realize how much our help means to others until much later, if we ever find out at all. Think back to the first part of the story. The old man wasn't even sure the bird would survive, yet he still took care of it. He didn't know how long it would take to heal or whether it would ever fly again, yet he spent his time and energy on something that wasn't certain to work out. That's what makes his reward so special. It wasn't something he did for recognition or thanks. It was simply something good to do. The old man could have left the bird to die. It wouldn't have been his fault. Instead, he chose to try and save it. And in doing so, he earned the nightingale's eternal gratitude. Let's think about the qualities of this old man. What kind of person was he? Why did he choose to help the bird? First of all, he was compassionate, couldn't bear to see an innocent creature suffer. He was also hopeful. Even when the bird seemed unlikely to recover, he believed it could be saved. And he was patient. He understood that healing takes time and that the bird needed him to stay by its side while it recovered. All these qualities make us like the old man more and root for him in the story. We want him to get the nightingale because he deserves it. When we read a story like this, we want to believe that good people get rewarded for their good deeds. Otherwise, it seems unfair that someone would go out of their way to do something nice only to have it go unrecognized. But sometimes things don't work out that way in real life. Good people sometimes don't get rewarded for their good deeds. They might even be punished for them. How many times have you seen someone being treated unfairly? How many times have you been the one being treated unfairly? When we see injustice like this, it can make us angry and hopeless. It can make us feel like there is no point in trying to be a good person if your efforts are just going to be wasted. But stories like the old man and the nightingale remind us that even when we do and see a reward, doesn't mean that there isn't one. We don't always know what kind of trouble someone is going through. We don't always know what kind of sacrifices they're remaking or what kind of challenges they're refacing. We can't always see the full picture, so we shouldn't jump to conclusions. We should be careful not to judge someone too quickly or to assume they're really not going through a hard time just because they seem like they're doing okay. We don't know what kind of pain someone is hiding. We don't know what kind of strength it takes for them to keep going every day. Maybe the reason the old man was chosen to receive the nightingale is because he understood this better than anyone else. Maybe he understood that everyone is carrying a burden. Everyone is going through a difficult time. Everyone needs a little bit of kindness and compassion from those around them. Now, let's look at the nightingale itself. This is a very important part of the story. Why was the nightingale sent to the old man? Well, it wasn't just because he had been kind to one bird. He had been kind to all birds, okay? You see, the nightingale is a symbol of generosity. It rewards those who have shown kindness to others without expecting anything in return. In some cultures, the nightingale is considered a sacred bird. It's believed to be a messenger between heaven and earth. It carries messages of love, hope, and happiness. And it's said that if you listen closely to its song, you can hear the secrets of the universe. The nightingale is often used as a symbol of beauty, grace, and freedom. Its song is said to be one of the most beautiful sounds in the world, and its ability to fly makes it a symbol of hope and optimism. And finally, let's think about the setting of this story. The desert. The desert is a harsh environment, but it's also a place of great beauty and tranquility. The old man chose to live in the desert because he wanted to be away from the noise and chaos of the world. He wanted to find peace and solitude. Hey, in the desert, he found exactly what he was looking for. The desert is often seen as a place of death and destruction, but it's also a place of rebirth and renewal. The old man's decision to move to the desert could be seen as a metaphor for his desire to start over, to leave his old life behind and create a new one. In the desert, he had the chance to do that. He could be whoever he wanted to be without anyone judging him or labeling him. He could live according to his own values and beliefs without fear of persecution. In the end, the desert was the place where the old man found the nightingale, where he received the reward for his good deeds. It was the place where he truly found peace. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. This is a story about a city. It's not just any city, but a city that existed before cities existed, a timeless city of whispers and secrets. It's a place where history sleeps beneath your feet, and every stone has a story to tell if you know how to listen. This is the story of Petra, a city carved from the color of dreams. Do you know what they say? The past is never dead. It's not even past. I think this must have been true here in Petra, because there are stories here that are so old they have become part of the earth itself. And if you stand in certain places and close your eyes and really listen, you can hear them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. They say the city did not begin with a hammer or a chisel. It began with a sigh. Long ago, a man walked into the desert. They say he had no name. He had no burden. All he had was a question that had no words. Do you ever feel like that? It's like there's something you need to know, something you must understand, but it's just out of reach. That was him. That was the traveler. T felt the vastness of the desert all around him and the endless sky above him, and he wondered, how did this happen? Where did all this come from? Why is the world like this? Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've looked up at the stars and felt small and insignificant, but for him, it was different. For him, it was an ache. It was a longing. It was a question that burned inside him like a fire. He walked for days, weeks, months, and the question never left him. It followed him like a shadow. And then one day, he found it. A place where the mountains opened up and the wind whispered through the rocks. And as he stepped into the valley, he felt something stir within him, like a memory from a forgotten dream. Here, the mountains seemed to lean towards each other, eager to share their secrets. And as he walked among them, he felt the echo of their voices in his bones. There was power here, ancient and strong, and it called to him like a long-lost friend. When the sun began its slow descent, he knew he had found his place. And as the last rays of light touched the peaks, he laid down to sleep on a dune. The sand was soft beneath him, and the silence all around him was a welcome change from the endless questions in his mind. As his eyelids grew heavy and his breath slowed, he felt the sand beneath him grow solid. It was as if the earth itself had heard his question and decided to answer it. His breath became brick and the silence became stone. And as the night deepened, a wall rose around him, sheltering him from the wind and the stars. In the morning, when the sun returned, it found a city carved from the heart of a mountain. For the traveler had fallen asleep in the exact spot where the earth had chosen to speak. In fact, it had happened right here. Beneath my feet is a vast chamber hollowed out of the living rock, hidden from view, yet fundamental to the city's soul. Here, deep within the mountain, is the place where the earth chose to speak and the city began. And as the city grew, so did its wonders. Houses were carved into the sandstone, each one a testament to the skill and imagination of its builders. Tombs were sculpted in the cliffs, each one a masterpiece of symmetry and balance. And all around, the city breathed with life. People came and went, traders and travelers, scholars and kings, each one adding their story to the tapestry of the city's past. But as the centuries passed, the city's fortunes changed. The winds of war blew across the desert, scorching the land and stealing the city's peace. New empires rose and fell, leaving their mark on the city's stones, both beautiful and terrible. Yet, through it all, the city endured, standing strong against the test of time. They say the greatest wonder of the city is its library. Here, deep within the belly of the mountain, is a place where knowledge is kept safe from the ravages of time. It's said that every book in the world can be found here, written on every surface: clay, wax, papyrus, parchment, metal, crystal, flesh, even stone. Every word, every story, every secret, all kept safe in the belly of the mountain. There's also a theater here, carved into the side of a hill, where plays and poems were performed under the stars. And beside it, a temple, silent now, but once filled with the prayers and hopes of thousands. And then there's the market, bustling and vibrant, where merchants sold their wares and travelers shared their tales. These are just a few of the places that make up the city, each one a marvel of engineering and design, each one a testament to the genius of the people who lived here. For me, the most enchanting place in the city is the high place of sacrifice. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping through the rocks, and below you, the desert stretches out like a sea of sand. Here, high above the city, is a place where the veil between the worlds is thin and the echoes of the past are loud. It's said that once a year, on the day of the winter solstice, the sun aligns perfectly with the entrance to the cave, creating a path of light that leads directly to the altar. When this happens, the bravest, or perhaps the most desperate of the city's inhabitants, climb to the top of the mountain and offer their most precious possessions to the gods, hoping to catch the eye of the sun and earn its favor. And as I stood there, looking out over the desert, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. To think that people once climbed this very mountain to sacrifice their most precious possessions to try to catch the attention of the sun, it was a humbling experience. It made me feel small and insignificant, but also connected to the countless others who had stood here before me. Now, you might be wondering, why am I telling you all this? Why should you care about a city carved from sandstone? What does it have to do with you? Well, I'll tell you. You see, this city, like many others, has been lost to time. For centuries, it was buried under sand and forgotten by the world. It wasn't until relatively recently that it was rediscovered, and even now, much of it remains hidden. There's still so much to uncover here, so much to learn, and who knows what wonders we might find next, hey? But it's not just the physical city that's important. It's also the city of whispers, the stories and legends that have been passed down through the ages. These are the stories that have shaped the city's identity. Stories of love and loss, of courage and sacrifice, of hope and despair. These are the stories that make the city come alive. And that's what I want to share with you, the stories of Petra, the city carved from the color of dreams. Join me as we explore the secrets of the past and discover the wonders that await us. Who knows, you might just find that you have a connection to this ancient city that runs deeper than you ever imagined. The last time I saw the world, the sun was a bruise on the horizon. Say, when you walk into the woods and don't come out, the trees will eventually learn your name. Say, when you walk into the city and don't leave, the buildings will eventually forget it. The taller they are, the faster they'll forget. When you walk into the city and don't leave, the river will keep flowing, but it won't remember your face. When you walk into the city and don't leave, the stars will burn out in the sky and new ones will take their place, but the city will never notice. I used to think this city was for everyone. Now I know better. This city is for those who have nothing left to lose, for those who want to start again from scratch, for those who need somewhere to hide, and those who want to disappear. And sometimes I think that's why I came here. The first time I came to this city, the rain tasted like oranges. I never told anyone, but I kept searching for the taste again and again, even though I knew it wouldn't be there. Because, in the end, what does a little rain matter? In the grand scheme of things, it's just water. But then you look at the faces around you and you see theirs etched with the memory of rain tasting like oranges. The second time I came to the city, the wind sang like sirens. I heard it in the old brick walls, in the rusted fire escapes, in the laughter of children playing hopscotch on the cracked pavement. If you listen closely enough, you can still hear it. It's the wind singing like sirens, an ancient song of warning and welcome. This city drowns everyone in sound, yet it remembers the tune of every passing soul. You only need to know where to listen. The third time I came to the city, the snow fell like feathers. That afternoon, everything stood still. The traffic stopped, the pigeons perched on window ledges. The vendors pulled their carts under cover, and the wind held its breath. Snow fell like feathers. It was beautiful. There is a quiet kind of magic in the air, a hush so deep you can hear the beating of your own heart. And when it snows in the city, the buildings stand naked, stripped of everything but their bones, the sharp angles and the hollow eyes. They say the city is full of lonely people. They're wrong. The city is full of solitary people, people who prefer to be alone, people who don't need anyone, people who don't want to be found. Okay, this is the city of solitary people. You can live here forever and no one will remember your name, but the city will remember your footsteps. I can still hear them echoing within me, guiding me through the concrete maze, pulling me back like a compass needle to magnetic north. I did unrealize I was being pulled until I had crossed half the world in search of something else. When you wake up in the middle of the night and reach for the one who isn't there, when the silence of the room is deafening and the absence of their scent almost tangible, you may think you're going crazy. You may think you're losing your mind, but in reality, you're coming home, because this city is not for speaking. It is for returning. For those who speak too much, the city will wear them down until their voices turn to whispers. I have watched many a talker become a mumbler here, but for those who come back, the city will always have a place. This is the city of those who come back. For those who dream deeply, the city will build them castles of glass and steel and show them kingdoms of neon light and chrome. Okay? I have seen dreamers walk these streets and I have seen them fall. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to wake up from a dream, but the city will wait patiently, dusting off their shoulders, brushing the cobwebs from their hair, giving them another chance, because the city knows that dreams are the only way to survive in a place without hope. For those who forget with love, the city will show them lovers who look like the ones they lost, couples who hold hands on park benches, families who laugh as they walk away, lovers who argue in the middle of the street. And the city will whisper their name on the breeze, hoping they will catch it before it fades away. I have seen many a heartbreaker wander these streets. I have seen them stop, reach out, only to grab at empty air. The city understands the ache of loss, the dull, constant throb of a missing heart, and it offers solace to those who seek it. Or maybe it's just the wind whistling through the broken windows. For those who pray with no words, the city will offer quiet corners when no one will judge their tears, their hopes, their fears. It will let them kneel in doorways against cold brick walls, under the shadow of skyscrapers, because prayer is the only way to speak in a place where no one listens. I have watched many a soul pour out onto these streets, begging the city for mercy, and the city has always listened. So if you ever find yourself in the city, if you feel its call in your bones, if you hear its song in the wind, know that it is waiting for you. Know that you are not lost. Know that you have been found. In the day, no door can be found. In the night, there are thousands, but no one knocks, no one calls. In the day, the city hides its scars. At night, the neon lights bleed on the pavement below. The buildings grow dark hollows under their skin, and the wind whistles a mournful tune through the canyons of glass and steel. In the night, the city comes alive with a different kind of energy, the pulse of loneliness echoing in the thumping bass of distant music, the shimmer of lost dreams reflected in the windows of luxury hotels, the silent scream of sirens fading into the darkness. In the night, the city is a labyrinth of shadows, a maze of concrete and steel, a monument to solitude. And yet, somehow, in the darkest hours, when the moon is a sliver in the bruised sky, and the stars are pinpricks of hope, there is a strange beauty to the city. It is the beauty of solitude, the stark elegance of a single street lamp illuminating falling snow, the graceful arc of a lone taxi's headlights, the gentle glow of a neon sign casting an otherworldly hue on the rain-slicked pavement. There is a poetry to the city at night, a melancholic rhythm to its solitude. It is a city that never sleeps, yet in its waking moments, it dreams of connection, understanding, belonging. If you are the city, then I am a part of you. Your wounds are my own. Your scars tell my story. Your dreams are my refuge. Your silence is my comfort. In the night, we are one. We are the city of solitary people, the city of dreamers, the city of those who love and lose and pray. We are the city of those who come back, the city of those who don't leave. We are the city. You know, people talk about the possibility of time travel, going back in time, meeting your ancestors, and all those kind of things. I have an idea for a story that's very different from that. It's not about traveling to the past. It's about a man who becomes trapped in the future. Let me explain what I mean. In this world that we live in today, we have something that previous generations did not have, which is choice. We can go to the grocery store, or we can go to the corner shop. We can take public transportation, cycle, or walk. We can eat pizza or Thai food. We can see action movies or romantic comedies. We have choices to make every single day. The reason why I'm bringing up the topic of choice is because in the story I want to share with you, the main character has none. He is trapped in a loop. He is forced to take the same road every single day. So, without further ado, let me share the story with you. The streets had no names, no stones, and yet they were there. Each step the traveler took made no sound, because the dust remembered every footfall before it happened. There were no signs, but the city, guided like a thought you never spoke aloud, but somehow followed. Beneath a sky that did not move, the traveler walked until he was not walking, only drifting through silence, laid down long before stars. He knew the rhythm of the wind through the empty avenues, knew the taste of rain on his tongue, the sting of hail on his shoulders. He knew the dust that coated everything and everyone, coating the inside of his mouth when he breathed, making him cough. hacking up small pebbles of memory from deep within him. The city was his only home, its boundaries the edge of his world. He had been walking for as long as he could remember. Some days the sun beat down on him, scorching his skin until he thought, his insides would boil and he would burst like a water balloon under the indifferent gaze of the relentless sky. On other days, the sky bled colors across the horizon, painting the houses in hues of dying embers as the traveler walked beneath a bruised and broken sky. One day, it began to rain. It was the first time in as long as he could remember that the sky cried. He stood still, tilting his head up, letting the water wash over him. It ran through his hair, down his face, off his chin, soaking his shirt, seeping into his trousers, flowing over his dusty skin, and melting into the thirsty earth. When the rain stopped, he continued walking, crunching on the newly soft ground, tasting the metallic temps of moisture on his lips. The first rain in a long time. He came to a square dominated by a rusted fountain. In its basin, rainwater collected, reflecting the gray sky in its depths. It was then that he saw it. Something new, something different. An umbrella. It was lying on the ground near the fountain, slightly ajar, soaked with rainwater. The traveler hesitated, then walked towards it. He picked up the umbrella and opened it, surprised by the smooth mechanism. Holding the umbrella over his head, he looked around. As if sensing his wonder, the sky wept again, releasing fat raindrops that splattered on the ground. The traveler laughed, a sound that caught in his throat and died, but a sound nonetheless. He walked on, his steps lighter, his gait quicker, feeling the rhythm of the falling rain, feeling alive. For the first time in his life, he didn't know where he was going, but he no longer cared. He walked out of the city. For the first time in his life, he walked beyond the familiar streets, past the rusty swing set in the square, past the old stone well at the edge of town. Where the road ended, he stopped. Before him stretched a landscape as far as he could see, a tapestry of green fields and dark trees, of distant hills and a winding river. He had never seen so much green in his life, so much life. A bird landed on the post that marked the end of the road, chirping loudly. The traveler reached out to touch it, and the bird flew away, disappearing into the blue immensity above. The traveler stood there a long time, just standing, drinking in the view, feeling the breeze on his skin, smelling the wet earth and the sweet grass, listening to the symphony of birdsong and the murmur of the wind. It was then that he heard it, a sound that made him freeze, the crunch of gravel underfoot, footsteps. Someone was walking towards him. He turned around, and there she was, walking out of the city, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her footsteps echoing his own. They looked at each other for a long moment, and the traveler felt something stir within him, a recognition, familiarity that transcended words or memories. She smiled at him, and in that smile, he saw the reflection of the endless sky, the vastness of the fields, the depth of the traveler's own being. He wanted to reach out and touch her, to feel the warmth of her hand in his, to lose himself in the depths of her eyes. He wanted to speak, to ask questions that had no answers, to tell her things he had never said, but he couldn't. He was bound by an invisible force to the path that led nowhere. He was anchored to the road that had no end. He wanted to follow her, to walk with her into the unknown, to explore the world beyond the world he knew, but he couldn't. He was tethered to the present, to the moment that stretched before him like an unbreakable chain. He wanted to reach out and touch her, to feel the pulse of life quicken in his veins, to taste the sweetness of her presence on his lips, but he couldn't. He was trapped in the stillness of a world that refused to move. And as she walked away, her footsteps fading into the distance, he was left standing there, a monument to lost memories and forgotten dreams. And when the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky bled into night, he turned and walked back into the city, back to the silence that had become his only companion, back to the emptiness that had become his only home. I read this story and it brought back memories of a time when I too felt trapped. Like the traveler, I felt stuck in a loop, forced to repeat the same actions day after day, unable to break free from the cycle. But then I realized that the story was not just about being physically trapped. It was also about being mentally and emotionally confined. The traveler had allowed his circumstances to define him, to limit his possibilities. He had given up on hope, on dreams, on love. But she, the woman who walked out of the city, represented hope, the possibility of a different future. She dared to dream, to explore, to love. As I continue my journey in life, I will remember the traveler's story and the valuable lesson it holds. Never give up on hope. Never allow your circumstances to define you. And always remember that love is possible, even in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. Your support means everything to us. Okay, so I want to begin this video by saying that I do know why this book was written. Someone asked me this question a few days ago, and it kinda just sat with me. It's like someone took something that didn't need to be said and said it anyway. And I think we do this a lot in writing and in life. We take our experiences and we find meaning in them, sometimes even when there isn't any. We make up reasons and causes. We create narratives because the silence is too loud, or the space is too empty, or the feeling is too painful to sit in. So we fill it. We always have to fill it. I think people forget that you can just sit with the void. You can sit with questions without answers, with feelings without labels, with memories without explanations. You can just be. But we don't like to be. I'm not gonna lie. It's scary when you look into the abyss. The abyss also looks into you, and sometimes what you see staring back at you is so painful that you don't want to look anymore. So you turn away and you try to find the words that will explain it all. The words that will give you back your innocence, the words that will save you. But there aren't any. There aren't any words. And I think that's what this book is about. A protagonist who doesn't understand what happened to her, what happened to him, what happened to us, to the world, to the time she loved, to the earth she walked on, to the sun that shone, to the moon that glowed, to the stars that twinkled. Why did everything change? She doesn't know. She doesn't ask. She doesn't care. Because in the end, none of it matters. What matters is the fact that she no longer cares. There are no characters in this book, only the protagonist, and her name is not important. It's never mentioned. T, and if you ever try to call her by any name, it will bounce back and hit you in the face, because she is beyond names, beyond identity, beyond self. There is no one there. The house has no windows and the doors are gone. The rooms are bare and empty. Nothing remains except the protagonist and the silence that surrounds her. It's heavy and thick and all-consuming, just like the love that once filled every corner of the house. The same love that now has vanished, leaving nothing but dust motes dancing in the faintest glimmer of light. And along the walls, lamps hung from hooks made of breath. They did not shine, and yet they showed the way. Their glow came not from fire, but from the dreams of those who had once waited and asked for nothing. You could not touch them. They were warm with absence, whole with emptiness, bright with the kind of light that only the soul sees after the eyes are closed. And so the traveler followed, not the lamps, but the peace behind them. I've been reading a lot of books lately, rereading old favorites, reading new releases, diving deep into worlds both familiar and strange. But I keep coming back to the same story over and over again. A story that's been with me since I was a child, since before I could read, since before I could write. A story that lives in the spaces between words, in the silences that echo louder than any scream. A story that whispers to me in the quiet hours, In the moments when the world fades away and all I'm left with is the vastness of existence and my own insignificant self. It's a story without a plot, without a resolution, without an ending. It's a story that simply is. It's the story of everything and nothing, of love and loss, of joy and sorrow, of hope and despair. It's the story of life and death and the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. It's the story of the universe unfolding and then collapsing in on itself, only to unfold again in a new and different way. It's the story of the eternal return, of the infinite now, of the never-ending journey. It's a story that I can't tell you because it's not mine to tell. It's a story that I can't share because it's not mine to share. It's a story that I can't even remember because it's not mine to remember. Okay? For I am but a small and fleeting part of the story, a character that appears for a moment and then disappears, leaving no trace, no mark, no echo. I am a leaf that falls from the tree of existence, a drop of water that evaporates into the vast expanse of eternity. Okay? And yet I feel this story deep within my bones, deep within my soul. Okay? It's a story that's been with me since the beginning and will be with me until the end. A story that's more real than reality, more true than truth, more present than presence. And as I sit here in the twilight of my years, as I gaze upon the fading light of day, as I listen to the whisper of the wind through the trees, as I watch the dance of the flames in the hearth, I know that this story is all there is. For in the end, we are all stories. We are all narratives woven together from the threads of time and space, from the stardust of creation and the echoes of oblivion. We are all characters in this grand cosmic play, playing out our roles until the curtain falls and the stage is dark. And then we are reborn into new stories, into new tales, into new dreams, into new lives, into new loves. And so the cycle continues, endlessly, eternally, infinitely. This book was written in a single sitting, in one continuous movement, in a state of flow, in a moment of grace, in an instant of insight. It was written not with the mind, not with the intellect, not with the ego, but with the heart, with the soul, with the spirit, with the essence. It was written in the language of being, in the tongue of existence, in the poetry of life, in the music of the spheres. It was written not to be read, not to be understood, not to be interpreted, but to be lived, to be felt, to be experienced, to be remembered. Okay? And as you read these words, as you hear these sounds, as you feel these sensations, as you taste, okay, these flavors, as you smell these scents, as you see these images, I want you to remember that you are not separate from this story, from this book, from this moment. Remember that you are a part of it, an integral part of it, an inseparable part of it, a necessary part of it. Remember that you are the story, the book, the moment. Remember that you are the protagonist. I'm sorry about yesterday. Yesterday was a little rough. You know, one of those days when everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Today, though, is a new day. Today, we get up close and personal with some very large animals. We also have a surprise visit from a friend. We do some drinking. There's an elephant polo match. There's lots of good stuff today. Come on. Let's go over here. And far in the east, a faint color stirred. Not light, but the warning that light would come. And the city sighed. Its walls loosened. Its windows blinked. Its courtyards leaned back into the dust. The traveler felt no fear. He had not come to stay. He had come to be reminded of something he was never told. And now that morning began to breathe. The city began to forget him softly, as it always does. He sat alone on the edge of the world, watching the sun bleed over the rooftops. Silently, the wind traced patterns on the surface of the water, ripples spreading outward like memories, fading, then gone. He closed his eyes, letting the warmth sink into his skin, a balm on old wounds. From somewhere below, a sound rose, a deep, resonant note that vibrated in his chest. He opened his eyes, searching for the source. Then he saw it, a giant shape shifting in the distance, a mountain range made flesh. The earth rumbled, the ground trembled beneath his feet, and with each step the elephant took, the city held its breath. They approached slowly, majestically, their tusks gleaming like polished ivory, catching the first rays of sunlight. They moved as one, their bodies swaying in unison, their eyes fixed on a distant point. He stood mesmerized, feeling the ancient power of these creatures surging through his veins. The elephant stopped before them, its presence filling the courtyard like a living monument, its wrinkled skin like folded maps, its eyes wise and knowing. The air crackled with anticipation. He could feel the energy building, the tension mounting. Gand. With a sudden burst of movement, the mahout raised his hand, a signal, a command. The elephant trumpeted, its tusks flashing as it charged forward. The crowd roared, their cheers echoing in the vast space, bouncing off the high walls. He joined in the applause, his hands clapping together, his feet stamping on the ground. The elephant circled the courtyard, its pace quickening, its movements becoming more erratic. It reared back on its hind legs, its trunk raised high, then crashed to the ground, sending up a spray of dirt and dust. But it wasn't just a show of strength. There was a grace to the elephant's movements, a fluidity that belied its size. It seemed to glide across the ground, its massive limbs carrying it forward with ease. He watched, captivated, as the elephant danced, its body swaying, its head tossing, its trunk swirling. It was a performance unlike any he had seen, a display of power and beauty that left him breathless. It was more than just a show. It was a story, a narrative unfolding before his eyes. The elephant was the protagonist, its every move telling a tale of strength, resilience, and freedom. It was a story that resonated deep within him, stirring something primal, something wild. He felt a surge of emotion, a mix of awe, wonder, and respect. He had come to the courtyard seeking entertainment, but he found something more. He found a connection to something larger than himself, to a timeless tradition that had been passed down through generations. As the performance ended, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing in the vast space. He joined in the applause, his hands clapping together, his feet stamping on the ground. But even as he applauded, he knew that he was witnessing something truly special, something that transcended mere entertainment. He had come to the courtyard seeking distraction, but he had found something more. He had found a moment of truth, a reminder of the power and beauty of nature, a glimpse into a world that was both ancient and eternal. And as the elephants disappeared over the horizon, he stood there, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, feeling the echoes of their presence all around him. He woke up in the middle of the night, his dreams filled with elephants, their calls echoing in his ears. He sat up in bed, his heart racing, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He looked around the room, trying to orient himself to make sense of the darkness that pressed in on him. Then he remembered the courtyard, the elephants, the performance. He had dreamed of the elephants, but it wasn't just a dream. It was a premonition, a sign, a call to action. He had to go back to the courtyard. He had to see them again. He got out of bed, his movements swift and sure, his resolve hardening with each step. He dressed quickly, pulling on the first clothes he saw, not bothering to tie his shoes or adjust his belt. He didn't care about appearances tonight. He had more important matters to attend to. He rushed through the streets, his bare feet pounding the pavement, his eyes fixed on the distant lights of the courtyard. He didn't stop to ask questions or seek explanations. He didn't need to. He knew where he was going and why. When he arrived at the courtyard, it was empty, deserted. The elephants were gone. He stood there for a moment, his chest heaving, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He had missed him. He had been too late. Then he saw it, a single elephant footprint imprinted in the dust. It was small, almost insignificant, yet it held a power that drew him in. He walked toward it, his eyes fixed on the imprint, his heart pounding in his chest. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath his feet. He looked up, his eyes wide with surprise, his breath catching in his throat. There it was, the elephant standing before him, its eyes gleaming in the darkness, its tusks flashing like silver swords. He felt a surge of fear, a primal instinct to run, to escape, to hide, but he couldn't move. He was frozen in place, his eyes locked on the elephant's. Slowly, the elephant took a step forward. Then another. It was coming closer, its presence filling the courtyard like a living shadow. He could feel its power, its strength, its wildness. And he was afraid, but he wasn't sorry. He stood his ground, his eyes never leaving the elephant's, his heart pounding in his chest. And as the elephant approached, he knew that he was about to embark on a journey that would change him forever. He had followed the footprints, not knowing where they would lead, and now he was about to find out. He stepped into the next room, the walls closing behind him like a curtain falling in a forgotten theater. There was nothing here, no furniture, no windows, only dust motes dancing in a shaft of light that slanted through a hole in the boarded-up roof. The air hung heavy with the scent of mildew and memories. He wandered to the far wall and pressed his palm against the rough plaster. It crumbled under his touch, revealing a hollow space behind. He traced the outline of what had once been a door, its frame now rotted away. He stared at the gaping hole, fear wrestling with curiosity inside his chest. Then he stepped through, bracing himself for whatever lay beyond. There was a gate, no hinges, no door, only an opening, a space between one breath and the next. He reached it, but did not pass through. He stood still. Behind him, the city waited to forget him. Before him, the world waited to remember him. And for one quiet moment, he belonged to neither. The gate did not close. It simply faded as he turned without moving. The old woman sat on a rickety stool, her gaze fixed on the flickering candle flame. Its light danced in her wide, unblinking eyes, eyes that held the wisdom of ages past and the secrets of forgotten lore. Her gnarled hands, twisted by time and hardship, rested on a wooden staff that seemed as old as she was. The staff was adorned with strange symbols, each line and curve whispering of ancient magic and arcane power. Despite her advanced age, her posture was surprisingly straight, her spine unbent by the weight of years. A patchwork quilt made of scraps of fabrics stitched together over time covered her lap, hinting at the countless stories woven into its seams. The room around her was dim, lit only by the candle's gentle glow. The walls were lined with shelves laden with dusty tomes, bound in leather and adorned with arcane sigils. The musty scent of old paper and forgotten spells hung in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of herbs and incense. An ornately carved wooden table dominated the center of the room, its surface bearing the marks of countless rituals and incantations. Overall, the impression of the space was one of age and mystery, of secrets whispered across generations and magic waiting to be rediscovered. It was a place where the boundaries between worlds were thin and the echoes of forgotten spells lingered in the air. A lone figure stirred, breaking the silence. The man sat cross-legged on the floor, his eyes closed in deep thought. His simple robes, the color of moonlight, were in stark contrast to the rich mahogany of the table upon which he rested. His hands, calloused yet graceful, rested on his knees, as though in prayer or meditation. The faint glow of moonlight filtering through a high window illuminated his sharp, strong features and the unruly strands of silver hair that escaped his simple linen headband. His chest rose and fell rhythmically, his breathing slow and measured, indicating a calm, focused state of mind. Despite the archaic decorum of the setting, There was about him an air of quiet confidence, an inner strength that hinted at battles fought and lessons learned. This was a man who had walked many paths and grappled with life's complexities, yet found solace in the timeless rituals of self-reflection and inner peace. In this secluded chamber, amidst the relics of a bygone era, he was a solitary beacon of resilience and contemplation, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of time's relentless march. They walked in silence for what felt like hours, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The towering shelves seemed to press in on them, laden as they were with grimoires bound in human skin and whispering with untold horrors. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the earth, the temperature dropping with every step. The only sounds were their hushed whispers and the distant drip of unseen water, creating an oppressive atmosphere of dread and anticipation. Their headlamps cast grotesque shadows that danced and twisted on the walls, adding to the sense of unease. The flickering light revealed faded murals depicting scenes of unimaginable torment and sacrifice, each stroke of color a testament to a dark and brutal past. As they ventured further, the stench of decay grew stronger, mingling with the metallic temps of blood, a potent reminder of the fate that awaited those who dared to delve too deep into the earth's dark heart. With each passing moment, the oppressive weight of the subterranean labyrinth pressed in on them, threatening to crush their spirits as surely as it had crushed the souls that came before. The gate stood before him, its surface smooth and featureless, devoid of any markings or symbols. It was as if it had been chiseled from a single block of stone. Yet, despite its simplicity, there was something about it that commanded respect, something that whispered of ancient power and forbidden knowledge. He ran his calloused fingers along its cool surface, feeling a strange resonance that seemed to echo within his bones. As he pressed his palm against the gate, a jolt of energy surged through him, causing him to pull back his hand in surprise. But as he steadied himself and prepared to knock, another sensation surprised him. The gate shuddered, not violently, but with a low, ominous hum that vibrated in harmony with the steady beat of his heart. Startled by this unexpected response, he hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of what lay beyond against the allure of the unknown. The hum ceased as abruptly as it began, leaving him in the suffocating silence of the tomb. He considered turning back, but the insatiable curiosity that had driven him so far compelled him forward. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, he knocked 3 times, each resounding thud echoing in the vast chamber like a death knell. The chamber was vast and empty, its colossal dimensions dwarfed only by the magnitude of the secrets it held. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and decay, a tangible reminder of the countless lives that had been extinguished within these very walls. Sunlight streamed through a high, arched window set high in the wall, illuminating motes that danced in the stagnant air. The only other features of note were 2 monolithic pillars that stood guard at either side of the entrance, their surfaces etched with arcane symbols that hinted at the chamber's sinister purpose. These glyphs, a language both alien and unsettling, seemed to writhe and twist before his eyes, weaving a tapestry of forbidden knowledge and eldritch lore. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, a strange sense of calm settled over him as he realized the true nature of his discovery. This was not merely a tomb, but a repository of forbidden lore, a silent sentinel guarding the veil between worlds. And as he stood there, bathed in the ethereal glow, he knew that he had stumbled upon something that would change his understanding of reality forever. The gargoyle shifted, its stone wings rustling as if disturbed by an unseen breeze. For a moment, he was unsure if he'd imagined the movement or if the play of light and shadow had tricked his eyes. But as he watched, the gargoyle stirred again, its head turning ever so slightly to fix its cold, reptilian gaze directly on him. Fear pricked at him, but he held his ground, his curiosity overriding his instinct to flee. The gargoyle regarded him silently, its stony eyes boring into his very soul, as if searching for something, perhaps weighing his worthiness to see what lay beyond. The tension stretched between them, broken only by the pounding of his own heart. Then, as abruptly as it began, the sensation vanished. The gargoyle returned to its silent vigil, its stony gaze once more fixed on the horizon. Relieved but shaken, he realized he had just witnessed something truly extraordinary. Creature of myth and legend, brought to life by forces beyond his understanding. The encounter left him questioning the very nature of reality and the secrets that lay hidden in the world around him. He found it nestled between two towering bookshelves, almost camouflaged by the aged leather bindings of the texts. The journal itself was unremarkable, bound in plain black leather and fastened with a simple clasp. Yet, it was the contents that promised a journey into the heart of darkness. As he opened the journal, the musty scent of decaying paper filled his nostrils. The first entry he read sent a shiver down his spine, chronicling the descent of a scholar named Elias into the depths of forbidden knowledge. Elias documented his exploration of ancient texts and rituals, his obsession growing with each passing day. The entries became increasingly frantic, speaking of unspeakable entities and the weakening of reality's barriers. Then, abruptly, the journal ended, leaving off with a chilling final entry that hinted at a horrifying transformation and a pact made with something vile and eternal. With each turn of the brittle page, he felt Elias's madness seeping into his own mind, the scholar's descent into madness becoming his own. The journal's final pages were missing, leaving him with a sense of foreboding and a desperate need to find what had been lost. As he closed the journal, he felt a profound unease, knowing that he had just glimpsed the abyss and the horrors that lurked within. A low growl echoed through the cavern, vibrating in the very bones of the structure. The growl rumbled and intensified, shaking the chamber to its core. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes materialized in the gloom, followed by the hulking form of a monstrous creature, its fur matted and torn, revealing sinewy muscles beneath. Its fangs glistened menacingly in the torchlight, and its eyes burned with an eerie green glow. With a guttural roar, the beast lunged, its claws extended, ready to tear him limb from limb. Instinctively, he dodged, the beast's claws raking across his arm, drawing blood. Adrenaline surged through him, fueling his desperate flight. He sprinted through the labyrinthine tunnels, the creature's heavy breathing close behind. Each echoing step shook the very foundations of the tomb, sending loose rocks tumbling in his wake. As he rounded a corner, he caught sight of an opening ahead, a shaft of sunlight piercing the darkness. Hope surged through him, propelling him forward. Emerging from the tunnel, he stumbled out into the blinding sunlight, collapsing on the grassy knoll, the creature's enraged roars echoing in his ears long after he had fled. As he turned, a shadow followed. It had no shape, but it spoke without voice. "You have walked where names are dust," it said. "You have remembered what cannot be written." The traveler listened. There was nothing to say. And yet, he felt as if something had been told to him, something he had always known. The shadow did not leave. It dissolved into the breath behind him. So he walked, lighter, slower, like one who had returned from something that never happened. So when you hear this story, if you're hearing it for the first time, then let me ask you this. Who is the traveler? Who is the shadow? Now, some of you will say the shadow is a hallucination, some figment of the traveler's imagination. But would you say the same about the breath? Can you see the breath? Can you feel the breath? The shadow is merely a figment of the imagination. Then so too is the breath, because you can't see the breath, you can't touch the breath. So the question is not whether you can see or touch these things, but whether you can feel them, whether they make a difference to you. And if they do, then they exist insofar as your experience of them is concerned. And so, the traveler walks on. Now, some of you might say, well look, The story doesn't tell us anything about the nature of reality. It merely describes the experience of this traveler. And you may be right, but isn't that the point? Sometimes we want our stories to tell us about the nature of reality. We want to know how things came to be, why they are the way they are, and who's responsible for all of this. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're just happy to walk alongside this traveler, to watch this shadow dissolve into the breath behind him, to watch him lighten, to watch him slow down. We don't need to know anything about the nature of reality. We're just happy to be here in this moment, experiencing something along with this traveler, even though the only thing we're actually experiencing is the telling of the story. So isn't that in itself also a kind of return? A return from something that never happened. There's a Zen story about a master and his student. They're walking together and they come across a wall. The student stops, looks at the wall and says, "Master, how do we get over this wall?" Okay. And the master simply replies, "What wall?" Okay. And he walks straight through it. Now, some people read this story and think, aha, the master has transcended the limitations of the physical world. The wall is an obstacle in the physical world, but the master is beyond the physical world. Therefore, he sees no wall. But there's another way to read this story, and it's a reading which perhaps we should apply to our own lives. You see, the student sees the wall, but the master doesn't. It's not because the master is beyond the physical world, but because the wall is only an obstacle if you believe it to be an obstacle. If you don't believe it's an obstacle, then it's not an obstacle. In fact, a wall is only an obstacle if you're trying to go through it. If you look at it sideways, it's not an obstacle at all. If you go around it, it's not an obstacle. And if you go through it, it's not an obstacle. So the master doesn't see a wall because he doesn't need to see a wall. His intention doesn't require him to see a wall. This story is told to remind us that obstacles are only obstacles. We think they're obstacles. If we change the way we think about them, if we stop looking at them sideways, if we stop trying to go through them, then they become opportunities. They become doorways. They become walls we can walk through. So perhaps when we hear this story, we should ask ourselves, what wall am I facing right now? And how do I stop seeing it as a wall? Haas. He turned. A shadow followed. It had no shape, but it spoke without voice. You have walked where names are dust, it said. You have remembered what cannot be written. When I first read this line, I thought, whoa, that's deep. Okay. You see, in the course of our lives, we pick up all sorts of labels, titles, descriptions, names. We're given names at birth by our parents. We're given titles by our peers and colleagues, by our employers. We adopt descriptions that we find appealing or that we think define us in some way. And we start thinking that these things are us. We think that they capture the essence of who we are, what we do, what we bring to the world, what we mean. And then the shadow speaks and it says, you have walked where names are dust. And suddenly it dawns on us that none of these things are true, that none of these things really matter. None of them define us. None of them capture the essence of who we are. They're just words. They're just labels. They're just sounds we associate with certain things. We walk where names are dust because names are just. And yet we take them so seriously. And yet we base our sense of self, our sense of identity, our sense of purpose on these names, on these labels, on these titles, on these descriptions. We chase them, we accumulate them, we hoard them. And in doing so, we forget who we really are, what we really are. We forget that underneath all these labels, underneath all this accumulated baggage, there is something real, something authentic, something precious. We forget that there is a jewel underneath all this, a dirt. You have walked where names are dust, it said. You have remembered what cannot be written. The traveler listened. There was nothing to say, and yet he felt as if something had been told to him, something he had always known. Now, what exactly does this mean? What has been told to him? Well, the shadow tells him two things. One is that he's walked where names are dust. He's discovered that all these labels and titles and descriptions don't really mean anything. They don't really capture anything essential. They don't really define anything. And yet somehow, in reaching this conclusion, he has also remembered something. He has remembered something that cannot be written. He has remembered something essential, something real, something authentic, something precious. And so he turns and he listens, because he knows that whatever this is, it's important. It's important that he understands this. It's important that he internalizes this. So he listens, and yet there's nothing to say. And yet he feels as if something has been told to him. What is this something? It's the same as the something he's always known. It's the same as the something he's always felt. It's the something that's always been there, waiting for him to remember it, waiting for him to rediscover it. It's the truth. It's his truth. It's the truth about himself, about life, about the world. And it's always been there. It's just that he forgot. He forgot because he allowed himself to be distracted by all these other things, by all these other sounds, by all these other names, by all these other labels, by all these other titles, by all these other descriptions. But now he's reminded. Now he remembers. The shadow did not leave, dissolved into the breath behind him. Hence, so he walked, lighter, slower, like one who had returned from something that never happened. The shadow dissolves into the breath behind him. It disappears. It vanishes. It becomes one with everything else that is one with everything else, because ultimately there is nothing separate. There is nothing external. There is nothing other. Everything is one. Everything is connected. Everything is interrelated. Nothing is separate. Nothing is other. And yet we act as if it is. We act as if there are all these divisions, these separations, these gaps, these differences. But there aren't. There are only our ideas, our concepts, our beliefs, our assumptions, our expectations, our desires, our aversions, our likes, and our dislikes. And these things have no power over reality. They have no power over the truth. They have no power over what is. And so the shadow dissolves into the breath behind him, into the aliveness that is always there. And he walks lighter. He walks slower. Why does he walk lighter? Because he's letting go of all this other stuff, all the stuff that's not real, all the stuff that's not true, all the stuff that he's always known isn't real, all the stuff that he's always known isn't true. Okay? And because he remembers this, he walks slower. He walks slower because he no longer needs to rush. He no longer needs to strive. He no longer needs to grab hold of things. He no longer needs to accumulate more and more. He's already got everything he needs. He's already got everything he'll ever need. And so he walks lighter, slower, like one who has returned from something that never happened. He's returned home. Okay, so this is pretty cool. It's from a book called The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. And this story is actually told backwards. So it starts with the ending, and then it works its way towards the beginning. And let's just get into it. If you look down where his feet had passed, the dust held no print. But as the morning light spread, a faint shape emerged. His name, written in a language no one spoke anymore. The letters were not carved. They were remembered. But even memory has wind. And as the sun touched the edges of the city, his name began to drift away, softly, lovingly, as if to say, "You were here." And that was enough. Let's take a moment to unpack this paragraph. First off, we have a mysterious character in an unnamed city. You don't know who he is or where he is, but all of that will become clear later in the story. He looks down and notices something in the dust. He had walked there before, but now there's something there that wasn't there before. Now, you might think that this is a super clever, magical world where people leave their names in the dust when they walk, or maybe it as some kind of chalk drawing that appeared overnight, but those are both incorrect. This is neither a magical world nor a chalk drawing. What actually happened was that this man left a name in the dust when he walked there. But because of the wind, the dust had blown away and it was gone until the morning light hit it just right. Only then did the shape reappear, the name written in a language nobody speaks anymore. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons. First of all, we now know that this man is likely from a culture or civilization that died out long ago. But more importantly, the fact that the name can only be seen in the morning light tells us two things. One, that this man is important to the story, because otherwise, why would the author go out of their way to tell us that? And two, that this name is a palindrome. A palindrome is a word or phrase that reads the same backward as it does forward, like race car or madam. And palindromes are really popular in fantasy stories because they often represent some kind of magic or power, which makes sense considering how this name appears. It also seems to be the only thing this man left behind, which again tells us that he must be important. But what's even more interesting about this paragraph is what happens next. Even memory has wind, a key, and as the sun touched the edges of the city, his name began to drift away. Okay, so not only is this name a palindrome, but it's also written in a dead language. And on top of that, it's disappearing because memory has wind. This is crazy. This name is literally the last vestige of an entire civilization, and it's blowing away. What does this mean? What does it say about this character that even his name is slipping through his fingers like grains of sand? Well, before we move on, let's take a moment to appreciate the beauty of this writing. Just look at this imagery. As the sun touched the edges of the city, his name began to drift away. I love how the author uses the sun as a metaphor for time. As time passes, the sun moves across the sky and eventually it touches the edges of the city, causing this name to disappear. This is such a powerful image, and it perfectly encapsulates the feeling of loss and nostalgia that permeates this entire paragraph. And as we close out this first part of the story, we're left with a sense of urgency. His name is fading away, and we need to find out who he is before it is too late. So let's rewind the tape and see how we got here. The old woman stood at the edge of the cemetery, clutching a bouquet of lavender and rosemary. She adjusted her shawl against the evening chill and scanned the rows of weathered headstones. She wasn't looking for a grave in particular, she explained to the young girl beside her. She was looking for a name. Her grandmother had spoken of a young man who loved to read poetry under the old oak tree. He used to sit there for hours, reciting verses by candlelight, dreaming of faraway lands. But after the fire, everyone had scattered, and she'd never known what had become of him. If she could find his grave, she thought she might find a piece of her lost past. So here we are at the beginning of the story. The main character, who we'll call the old woman, is standing in a cemetery looking for a name. She doesn't know whose grave she's looking for, but she's hoping that once she finds it, it will lead her to answers about her past. See, she grew up in a town with a group of friends, and one of them, a young man who liked to read poetry, disappeared after a fire destroyed the town. And now she's back to try and find out what happened to him. But here's the thing, this isn't just a random cemetery. These are the graves of her ancestors, and that means that if she wants to find this guy's grave, she's gonna have to dig up some family history. She continued, walking slowly, the scent of lilies and honeysuckle heavy in the air. Each grave marker was a whisper from another time, etched with the names and dates of birth and death of her forefathers. Some were simple field stones, others monuments of marble and granite. Most bore no markings at all, lost to time and weather. Generations of winters had eroded the earth, swallowing whole rows of headstones and leaving only the ghosts of names beneath the grass. But she wasn't looking for any of them. Not yet. She was looking for a poem. This is where our narrator begins to tell her story. Which is fascinating because up until this point, we haven't heard anything about her life. We don't know anything about her childhood or what it was like growing up in this town, so this moment is a bit of a plot twist. It turns out that this old woman is actually the main character of the story, and we've been following her journey backwards without even realizing it. As she walks through the cemetery, she's overcome with emotion. She remembers all the people buried here, her ancestors, and she feels a deep connection to them. But she's not here to visit their graves. She's here to find the grave of a friend who died. But then the story takes another twist, because the narrator reveals that she's actually looking for a specific poem. This poem is important because it's connected to the missing friend. And finding the grave of whoever wrote the poem is going to lead her closer to finding her friend. I'm sure at this point you're wondering who this mysterious poet is, right? Well, it's me. Okay, just kidding. It's not me. It's the old woman's grandfather. Let's jump ahead and find out what happened to him. Then she heard his voice, a low rumble like distant thunder. "What do you seek?" he asked. "A lost name," she whispered, cupping the lavender to her chest. "Perhaps," he said, stepping closer, "you seek instead a lost story." Then, with a flick of his wrist, he pointed to a nearby grave. "There rests the last of the alchemists, one who dreamed of stars and made a name for himself among the scholars of distant lands. They say his knowledge burned away in the end, leaving nothing but ash and starlight." With a sigh, the old woman turned toward the grave he indicated, its weathered surface bare, save for two words, Zacharias Bellwether. Here's what's happening in this scene. The old woman is talking to someone in the cemetery. Don't know who this person is, but they seem to know a lot about the history of the cemetery and the people buried there. So they're probably a ghost, or maybe a caretaker. Either way, the old woman asks them for help finding this poem. Okay. And the ghost points her in the direction of a specific grave. This grave belongs to a man named Zachariah Bellwether, who was apparently a scholar. And as the ghost says, all that's left of him is a pile of ashes and some starlight. Okay. This is where the story really starts to come together. Okay. We finally get to see the old woman as a character, because up until this point, we've only seen her from the perspective of the dead man. And this scene reveals that she's been looking for this poem for a very long time. It's been years since she left town. Okay. But she kept thinking about this one specific poem and couldn't stop searching for it. And now it looks like she found it. And that's the end of part 1. In part 2, we're going to pick up right here and find out what happens next. But before we do that, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the significance of the poem? Why is it so important to the old woman? And do you think she'll find the answer she's looking for? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a rare work in the old fantasy genre, specifically one that was published in the 1970s and yet has a very different feel from most things written in that era. It is Perelandra by American author Anne McCaffrey, originally published in 1979. This is the second book in her Harper Hall trilogy, which begins with the ship who sang and concludes with the city of the singers. But whereas those two books are more science, fantasy, and space opera, respectively, its middle entry leans much more heavily into high fantasy and is very much worth reading as a standalone story. This book is notable for many reasons. Not only does it contain some amazing world building and have a compelling plot, but it also features one of the most powerful female characters in all of literature and one of the first transgender characters who was also a badass warrior woman. Today, let's get started. Our protagonist in this particular novel is a young woman named Vine who lives on the planet Perelandra. That's where the book gets its name from. And so far, she seems to be your typical bucolic fantasy village girl. She's never left her home, and she spends her time caring for animals and helping out the community. However, the idyllic existence of her life in the mountains is about to change because shortly after the story begins, a mysterious glowing light descends from the sky and completely obliterates the mountain pass behind her house, turning it into a lake. Then, just when she thinks that maybe that's it, and things can't get any worse, a small army of men shows up demanding that she become their queen. See, this particular military force comes from a neighboring kingdom who apparently have some sort of divine right to rule over Paralandra, even though they don't actually live there, okay? The people of Vine's village resist them at first, okay? But they do not have much of a fighting chance, because these invaders have access to deadly weapons technology that they do. They're basically armed with spears and swords, while the bad guys have firearms and armored vehicles. So, yeah, needless to say, things go really poorly for them. Fortunately, Vine manages to escape with her life, although she does lose her pet hawk along the way. She doesn't travel far before she meets a guy named Damien, who offers to help her out, takes her to his home in the nearby city of Havner, where she meets his mother and sister. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you may recognize the name Havner, as this is the city that Anne McCaffrey based off of Pern. And if you're familiar with that world, you may be wondering how this book fits into the timeline of events there, okay? Well, this is actually part of an alternate history of Pern, where Pern is known as Pern Prime. So if you're trying to keep track of all the different worlds and timelines, here, I'll give you a quick cheat sheet. Basically, Pern Prime is a Pern that went a little bit differently. After the fall of the ancient telepathic race known as the Kari, this version of Pern split off into several different branches of alternate realities. Some of these versions remained relatively close to our own timeline, while others diverged wildly. For example, the Pern Prime we meet in this book looks a lot like our own, except for the fact that women occasionally compete in athletics, and there is apparently still a small population of dragons around. The Pern of the main series, on the other hand, is significantly different. There, the human race evolved separately from the Kari, and they were eventually wiped out entirely until just recently, thanks to the efforts of the telepaths. As for Paralandra, it is a Pern that ultimately diverged so far from our own that the telepathic link between the species known as the Bond basically broke down, even though it still exists. However, since the Dragon Riders of Pern haven't visited this reality in over 1,000 years, this place has essentially developed along its own path without much outside influence. This lack of contact is why the people of Pern Prime do not know anything about the telepathic abilities of dragons or the existence of other, and why the Dragon Riders do not know about the development of this alternate reality. This alternate timeline also explains why the cover art depicts a Dragon Rider, even though they didn't exist in this particular world. That's how we know that this is supposed to be part of the Pern universe. Anyway, back to the story. While living with Damien's family, Vine learns that the invading force who destroyed her home is led by a man named Radigok. She also discovers that he killed Damien's father, who apparently used to be a general in the king's army before being dishonorably discharged and forced to flee. We soon learn that the reason Radigok wants to conquer Pern Prime is that he wants to claim its natural resources for himself, and that he murdered Damien's father because he opposed him. Naturally, Vine wants revenge, but unfortunately, it isn't that easy. Although she now knows that the invading army is planning to sacrifice an entire village of innocent people, she is unable to do anything about it because she doesn't have any combat training. Plus, even if she did, she would probably die if she tried to fight the invaders head-on, because they have guns and she doesn't. As a result, she ends up striking up an alliance with the local crime lord, a cunning thief named Kailara, whose shady organization of informants and assassins is known as the Net. With their help, she is able to sneak into the invaders' camp and steal their plans. From there, she and Kailara form an elite strike force with a handful of other accomplices to take down the invaders. Their main tactic is sabotage. They murder key personnel, blow up supply trucks, and spread disinformation. Even though the resistance is making progress, though, they suffer a devastating loss when Kyla is killed by a member of the invaders named Shara. This turns out to be a huge mistake on Shara's part, because it inspires Vine to seek out vengeance against her. Now that Vine has a personal reason to defeat the invaders, she trains herself to become a lethal warrior and assassin. And then, along with a handful of allies, she murders Shara and decapitates her. The rebels use Shara's severed head as a warning to the rest of the enemy forces, and slowly but surely, they begin to turn the tide of war against them. Eventually, Vine confronts Radagast himself and kills him in single combat. His death demoralizes the remaining soldiers, and they surrender immediately afterwards. With the threat of invasion now over, Vine becomes a celebrated hero throughout the land. She eventually becomes queen and reforms her society to ensure that something like what happened never happens again. So that's the story in a nutshell. But what about that dream sequence at the beginning? The one where we see a bunch of walls trembling? Well, that's actually a vision that Vine has of another Pern, one that exists even further down the timeline than the one we just talked about. The specifics of this future reality aren't explained, but it seems as though this Pern has fallen into an oppressive dictatorship, and the only hope for its people lies with a descendant of Vine named Teller. It's kind of like a sci-fi version of A Tale of Two Cities. If you want to read that story, unfortunately, it will require a bit of effort on your part, because it was never actually written. That's right. Although McCaffrey wrote over 30 novels and short stories set on Pern, none of them featured this alternate timeline. This entire story exists only in the mind of the author. And I mean that literally. When McCaffrey first began writing The Ship Who Sang, she realized that it would be impossible to continue that character's story in a satisfying way. So she created a new character named Teller to serve as the protagonist of the next book. In the midst of writing, however, McCaffrey suffered a debilitating stroke and had to stop working on her manuscript. She passed away in 2011. Her son, Todd McCaffrey, finished the book for her. And in the acknowledgments, he gives us some insight into the process. He says, Anne had already completed the first draft of the manuscript when her health failed. While I was completing the final edits on this manuscript, I found this passage in her journal. It is unedited and slightly cryptic, but to me, it expresses the heart of the novel. Here is a city, not mine, but yours, whose foundations were laid before the time of my stories. And here am I to lay another stone upon its high walls. Yet I am but a casual passerby, a pilgrim who pauses beside a great city long builded by hands long gone. Clearly, the original vision for this Pern was a sprawling epic spanning multiple timelines and featuring characters from across several generations. Sadly, it was never meant to be. So now the question is, should you bother reading it? Well, I think it is well worth reading for fans of the genre and for a long time. Pern fans who want to see how this beloved world would look if it developed along a completely different path. It's also got a fantastically complex plot, some well-developed characters, and it marks a significant departure from the usual tropes seen in most high fantasy novels. And if you enjoy strong female leads, you won't find anyone better than Vine. I mean, sure, her characterization could definitely use some work, but damn if she isn't badass. That's all I have to say for this video. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day. When I first started writing fiction, I wanted to be a poet. So when I sit down to write a story, I'm really sitting down to sculpt with words. I think of each sentence like a block of marble, and I chip away until I have something beautiful. Now, I love doing this, but there is a problem. My readers don't want me to put so much effort into every single line. They want some action, damn it. So here I am. I hope you enjoyed this story from the wasteland. He stood where no city remained, only sand, only morning. The wind blew over the flat gray landscape, whispering across the dunes like the ghost of a lullaby. It had been a long time since he'd heard the sound of wind, without the comfort of buildings to muffle it. To shield him, he pulled his threadbare cloak tighter around his shoulders. The sun beat down mercilessly, baking the sand until it shimmered with heat haze. Above him, the sky was an endless dome of burning blue, stretching out to meet the horizon. He squinted against the glare, searching for a landmark, a tree, a rock formation, anything to break the endless sameness. His lips were dry and cracked, and his tongue felt heavy in his mouth. How long had he been walking? Days? Weeks? Months? Time had lost all meaning in this desolate place where the sun rose and set in a silent, empty sky. He had woken up here, or maybe he had always been here. He couldn't remember. In the days before, if such a thing was possible, there had been other survivors. Broken people who stumbled through the wasteland, desperate for water or companionship or a kind word, anything to ease the torment of their existence. But now there was only sand and the ghost of a lullaby. As he continued his aimless trek, his feet sank into the yielding sand. He kicked out, cursing, then stopped. What was the point? Every step took him further into the heart of the desert, deeper into the silence. A lone tear traced a path down his dusty face, leaving a clean streak in its wake. It was the first tear he'd cried in a long time, the first since he'd stopped crying. Why did it hurt so much? Oh, wasn't this what he'd chosen? Didn't he want to walk until he had nothing left to walk away from? Sudden movement in the distance caught his eye, a dark shape rising and falling with the rhythm of the wind. Was it a bird? A mirage? Another lost soul? He strained to see, hope battling with despair in his chest. As the shape grew larger, resolving itself into a man, he broke into a run. Maybe there was water somewhere to hide, someone who understood. The man didn't seem to notice him though, or perhaps he didn't care. He shuffled forward like a mindless drone, his eyes fixed on the shimmering horizon. He looked old, very old, yet strangely timeless, as though he had been here forever and would be here forevermore. His clothes were tattered, his hair and beard flowed down his sides like hash. Usar, bin, end, Python 3. He stopped in front of the old man, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Water, he croaked, his voice raw with thirst. Is there water? The old man turned his head slowly, revealing eyes that were as empty and lifeless as the desert around them. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The man recoiled as if struck, his hand flying to his mouth. He didn't want to hear the old man's voice because he knew what it would say. He had heard it before, countless times. You seek water, the old man rasped, his voice like the grinding of stones. But the desert holds no water. You seek life, but there is only death here. He gestured around them with a gnarled finger, his knuckles like the roots of a dead tree. This is the end, child, the end of the world and the end of your story. Here, the sun claims all in its merciless embrace. Even memories turn to dust in this wasteland. The man shook his head, desperate to cling to his humanity. I remember, he whispered, his eyes wide with fear and wonder. I remembered the city. I remember the people. I remember the lamps in the evening, the gate at the edge of the world, the shadow that fell across the sand at dusk. The old man's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement, or maybe it was just the sun glinting off bone. Do you remember the taste of water on your lips, the feel of grass beneath your feet, the sound of laughter on the wind? Yes, the man breathed, his voice catching in his throat. Yes, I remember. The old man reached out a hand, his fingers like the claws of a desert bird. Then let go of the past, child. Let go of the pain and the sorrow, the anger and the fear. Release it all and become one with the silence. The desert has no need for memories. Embrace the stillness within you and let the peace of the desert wash over you. Let go and be free. The man hesitated, torn between the comfort of his memories and the promise of oblivion. He looked back at the city, or what was left of it, and saw not the bustling metropolis of his past, but a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered lives. He looked at the old man, his eyes filled with understanding. Slowly, he closed his eyes, letting go of the past, surrendering to the silence. The desert wind picked up, swirling around him, carrying with it the whispers of forgotten voices. The man opened his mouth and laughed, a sound that echoed across the barren landscape, a sound that spoke of joy and sorrow, of life and death, of memory and forgetting. And then he was still. The wind continued to blow, carrying with it the last echoes of the man's laughter. The old man watched him go, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had shown the man the way, but it was the man's choice to walk the path to the end. Whether that end was death or rebirth was not for him to say. The desert had a way of stripping away all pretense, all masks, all illusions. It laid bare the soul, leaving only the essential truth, and in that truth there was freedom. He watched the sun rise and set, day after day, watching the shadows lengthen and then recede. He watched the sand shift and change, creating new patterns, new shapes, new mirages. He watched the wind blow, carrying with it the whispers of the past and the promise of the future. And he waited. One day, he felt something stir within him, a flicker of life in the vast emptiness. It was a sensation he had long forgotten, a feeling of aliveness. He didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse, but he was grateful for it nonetheless. It made him feel less alone. He began to explore the wasteland, to wander through the ruins of the old world, to search for signs of life, for anything that could help him understand the desert, to understand himself. He found books, their pages brittle and yellowed with age, but their words still powerful and true. He found tools, their edges dulled with disuse, but their purpose still clear and strong. He found art, its colors faded, but its beauty still shining through. In these relics of the past, he found a connection to the people who had lived before him, to the hopes and dreams they had cherished, to the struggles they had endured. He felt their presence all around him, in the wind that whispered through the ruins, in the sand that shifted with the seasons, in the stars that twinkled in the endless night. And as he journeyed deeper into the wasteland, he began to heal. The desert had stripped him bare, exposing his wounds, but it had also given him the space and the solitude to heal. He learned to listen to the whispers of the wind, to find guidance in the shifting sands, to find comfort in the eternal stars. He learned to trust the desert, to respect its power, to honor its wisdom, and in time, he found peace. He learned to accept the things he could not change, to let go of the things he could. He learned to live in the present moment, to appreciate the beauty of the desert, to find joy in the simplest of things. A patch of wildflowers, the flight of a hawk, the sparkle of dew on a thorn bush. He did not remember the lamps, or the gate, or the shadow, but he remembered how it felt to be held by something older than time and softer than forgetting. This is the sound of distant drums beating across the desert sands, their rhythm hypnotic, their source unknown. This is the sound of a lone wanderer traversing the vast emptiness, his footsteps crunching on the parched earth. This is the sound of the wind whispering tales of forgotten times through the crumbling ruins of a lost city. Welcome to this oasis of tranquility, here amidst the swirling sand and the haunting melodies. We invite you to unwind, to lose yourself in the labyrinthine passages of our stories, and to discover new facets of a world that never ceases to amaze. Today, we've retaken a journey back in time to explore an ancient city that has been swallowed by the sands of time. Our tale begins with the rhythmic cadence of the wind as it caresses the skeletal remains of buildings long abandoned. Sun-bleached bones of a civilization past peek out from beneath the shifting dunes. Silent sentinels guarding secrets from a forgotten age. What was once a bustling metropolis is now a ghost town, an eerie tableau, frozen in time. The wind moans a mournful tune through the empty window sockets, seeming to lament the city's tragic fate. It's a haunting melody that stirs the soul and awakens a deep sense of nostalgia for a time we never knew. The relentless march of time has transformed this urban wasteland into an enigmatic puzzle. As the centuries rolled by, nature reclaimed what was once hers, turning the city into a tomb beneath the desert sands. Now, only fragments remain, shards of a civilization lost, challenging us to piece together the narrative of a forgotten people. We find ourselves standing at the precipice of the unknown, peering into the abyss of time in an attempt to understand the story that brought this city to its knees. Why did it fall? What were the joys and sorrows of those who walked these streets? And what can its demise teach us about the fragility of even the grandest civilizations? These questions echo in the vast emptiness unanswered, yet compelling us to seek answers in the whispers of the wind and the silent stories etched in stone. Amidst the sea of sand, a lone traveler named Kellen emerges, his weathered face a roadmap of his journeys across unforgiving terrains. Driven by an insatiable curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, he braves the harsh environment, hoping to uncover the mysteries hidden within these buried ruins. Kalen, a seasoned explorer with a heart full of wonder, ventures forth into the heart of the desert. His eyes, sharp and keen, scan the horizon, searching for any sign of life or any clue to the city's whereabouts. With each step he takes, the weight of history presses down on him, urging him to tread lightly on sacred ground. For Colin knows that every grain of sand beneath his feet holds countless stories waiting to be unearthed. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the dunes, Colin spots a glint of sunlight reflecting off something buried beneath the sand. Hope surges through him like a desert flower blooming after a rare rainfall. Could this be the sign he's been searching for? With renewed vigor, Colin brushes away the sand, revealing a weathered piece of stone. It bears the faintest hint of an inscription, a cryptic message from a bygone era. The discovery sends a shiver down his spine, igniting a fire of determination in his heart. He realizes that he's on the verge of unearthing secrets that have lain dormant for centuries. With calloused hands and unwavering resolve, Colin continues his excavation, each stroke revealing more of the buried structure. Slowly but surely, a wall emerges from its sandy slumber, followed by the outline of a doorway, a window, and finally, the entire face of a building. As the day wanes and the temperature drops, Colin's excitement grows. He's discovered the remnants of a library, a repository of knowledge from a time when scholars roamed these halls seeking wisdom and enlightenment. What treasures of literature and learning lie within its crumbling walls? Bated breath, Colin steps inside, his eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. He runs his fingers along the rough-hewn shelves, imagining the countless scrolls and books that once lay here. In the hushed silence, he feels an overwhelming sense of loss, knowing that countless works of art, philosophy, and history have been lost to time. Determined to salvage what he can, Colin begins the arduous task of sifting through the debris, carefully brushing away the sand and dirt that have obscured them over the years. As twilight descends, casting long shadows across the ruined floor, Colin's efforts begin to pay off. He discovers a collection of clay tablets, each one a testament to a bygone era. With gentle hands, he examines the embossed characters, realizing that they hold a wealth of information about the city's inhabitants, their customs, beliefs, and way of life. Each tablet is like a piece of a shattered mirror, reflecting a fragment of a forgotten culture. Colin feels a profound sense of responsibility wash over him. He understands that these artifacts are more than just relics of the past. They are the voices of an entire civilization, waiting for someone to listen to their tales. With reverence, Colin gathers the tablets, carefully wrapping them in protective cloth to shield them from further damage. As the last rays of sunlight fade away, he makes camp beside the ruins, his discoveries resting safely beside him. Under the watchful gaze of a million stars, Colin reflects on the day's discoveries. The wind whispers tales of the city's former glory, carrying echoes of laughter, sorrow, hope, and dreams. Colin listens intently, letting the wind's lullaby lull him into a peaceful sleep. When morning breaks, bathing the desert in hues of gold and rose, Colin wakes refreshed and ready to continue his exploration. As the sun climbs higher, guiding his path, Colin stumbles upon a series of interconnected chambers. The entrance, concealed by layers of sand, leads to a subterranean labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. Curiosity piqued, Colin ventures inside, armed with nothing but his wits and an unwavering thirst for discovery. The air grows cooler as he descends deeper into the earth, the sound of dripping water echoing through the darkness. Suddenly, a faint glimmer catches Colin's eye. He moves closer, his heart quickening, and discovers a network of luminous mushrooms illuminating the subterranean space with an otherworldly glow. The sight is both eerie and uninspiring, as if the very essence of the earth has come to life. As Colin navigates the intricate network of tunnels, he notices markings on the walls, symbols and patterns that seem to hold a deeper meaning. Its intricate designs hinting at celestial maps, astronomical alignments, and perhaps even secret pathways leading to other parts of the city. Colin realizes that he's on the brink of unraveling a mystery that has baffled scholars for centuries. The existence of this underground labyrinth challenges everything he thought he knew about the ancient city. With each step, the intrigue deepens, beckoning him to explore further. But as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the tunnel floors, Colin knows he must return to the surface. The journey back is fraught with challenges, as the labyrinth seems to twist and turn, testing his resolve. However, the prospect of sharing his discoveries with the world keeps him going. Finally, he emerges from the opening, blinking against the bright daylight, carrying with him the secrets of the underground labyrinth. In the days that follow, Colin returns to the city with a team of archaeologists and historians eager to unearth more of its secrets. Together, they meticulously excavate the site, uncovering artifacts that shed light on the city's rich history. Their findings are nothing short of astonishing, revealing a civilization far more advanced than anyone had imagined. They uncover remnants of a sophisticated irrigation system, evidence of trade networks that spanned vast distances, and remnants of public buildings that spoke of a society that valued education, art, and community. As the sun sets over the ancient city, casting long shadows over the newly unearthed ruins, the team gathers around their discoveries. The air buzzes with excitement as they piece together fragments of pottery, jewelry, and tools, each item weaving a new thread in the tapestry of the city's history. Among their finds, they discover a series of clay tablets inscribed with a language that has remained undeciphered for centuries. The script, unlike anything they've encountered before, holds the potential to unlock deeper secrets of the civilization. With renewed determination, they pore over the tablets, comparing the symbols to other ancient scripts, searching for similarities, for any clue that could lead to a breakthrough. Their efforts are Herculean, painstaking, yet their dedication knows no bounds. They spend countless hours poring over ancient texts, consulting with fellow scholars, and experimenting with various linguistic tools. Finally, after months of tireless work, they achieve a breakthrough. The language they discover is an early form of a known language, its roots tracing back to the very dawn of its evolution. With the translation comes a deluge of information, shedding light on aspects of the civilization that were previously unknown. They learn of a thriving trade network that extended beyond their wildest imaginations, connecting them to distant lands and cultures. They uncovered tales of their societal structure, their religious beliefs, and their daily lives. The city, once lost to time, is brought back to life through their painstaking efforts. News of their groundbreaking discoveries spreads like wildfire, attracting the attention of scholars and adventurers from across the globe. The ancient city, once a whisper in the desert winds, becomes a beacon of knowledge, drawing those seeking to expand the boundaries of human understanding. The city, though buried beneath the sands of time, stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. It serves as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, civilizations can flourish and leave behind a legacy that defies the sands of time. The wind whispers through the crumbling ruins, carrying tales of a vibrant past and reminding us that beneath the shifting sands, the echoes of history endure. And so, dear listener, our journey through the forgotten city draws to a close. We hope we've transported you to a time when adventure and discovery knew no bounds. If you found solace in our tale, we invite you to share your thoughts and join us in exploring more captivating stories. Until next time, may your own adventures be filled with wonder, and may the echoes of forgotten civilizations forever captivate your imagination.